Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Startup Sense podcast. This is your host, Jonah Lupton. Once again, we're bringing a great episode. So look forward to talking to our next guest, Joel Trammell. He is the founder of a company called Khorus. The website is khorus.com. That's Khorus. He's actually a solo founder. So I'll be asking him some questions about that in a few minutes. Company's based in Austin, Texas. They've raised about $6.6 million across a couple rounds. About 15 people right now at the company, and essentially what they do is they help CEOs run their companies better. I'm a CEO right now, growing a company, so I am really excited to talk to Joel and learn more about the product. Joel, how are you, man?
Doing great, Jonah. Glad to be with you.
Thank you for joining us today. So tell us about Khorus. What exactly do you guys do over there?
Yeah, Chorus is an attempt to provide a platform for CEOs to help them run their organizations better. And we're really focused on helping the CEO, who's arguably the most important person in an organization. How do they communicate to the organization? How do they align everybody in the company, get them all rowing in the same direction? And then most importantly, deliver predictable performance. My idea is that the key role of the CEO is to deliver predictable performance.
Now, you started this company back in 2012. What was the motivation back then, and maybe what were you doing leading up to this?
So I had run several startups before, had some nice exits, and as I ran those startups and they grew, into significant companies, I had developed a management methodology in the company, and so Chorus is really my attempt to take that management methodology that I developed and put it into software and make it easy to use so CEOs could leverage that because while your invention, the whatever makes your company special may be unique, managing hundreds of employees has been done many times before. And so trying to leverage those best practices into software was kind of the impetus for Chorus.
What is your sweet spot? Meaning, what are the typical size companies that Khorus works with?
Yeah, we start with companies about 25 employees, and then we have companies all the way up that are public companies with thousands of employees.
And why start at 25? What's happening at companies, smaller companies, startups with 5 or 10 people?
Yeah, when you have 5 or 10 people, you're really kind of a project manager CEO, and that you can keep all the details in your head or on a little spreadsheet or whatever. You visit with everybody on a regular basis. It's only when you get somewhere typically between 25 and 50, you start getting multiple locations in some cases, you start growing fast. And as CEO, I know from experience, you just can't manage it out of your back pocket anymore. You got to get more systematic about the way you manage the organization. So that's why it starts about 25 is where we see a lot of companies start feeling some of those tensions.
And then up into the thousands, I assume, right, in terms of employees?
Absolutely. The more employees you have, the more distributed the company is, the higher growth rate you have. All these things are complexities that the CEO has to deal with from an organizational perspective.
What are some of the biggest failures that are common amongst CEOs trying to grow an organization? Hire the right people, keep the product innovation up and current. I mean, there's so many things a CEO needs to worry about, and certainly it's driven by the industry and a lot of other factors. But where are CEOs making the biggest mistakes in your mind?
Yeah, in my book, The CEO Tightrope, I have failure modes, I call them, and you'll see a lot of different failure modes among CEOs, but some are certainly recurring. One of the ones I see, pretty consistently is they become a cheerleader for the company, and a cheerleader cheers for their team regardless of whether they're up 20-0 or whether they're down 40-0. And the problem that causes for a CEO is if you're always optimistic and always saying everything's great, even when maybe you're losing or things aren't going well, after a while, people quit trusting you. And as CEO, if you lose trust, if the people in the organization don't think you're credible, you really can't have a big impact on the organization. So constant over-promising and under-delivering from the CEO is probably the number one thing I see.
Now, one of the most common questions that people ask me when they reach out for help in starting their next business is, should I bring in a co-founder or not? Now, you are a solo founder on this company. Maybe talk to us about why that is. I mean, did you have co-founders in previous businesses and just want to do this one on your own?
Yeah, I've done the whole gamut. So I've certainly had co-founders, including my wife being co-founder of one of my most successful business. And that's an interesting dynamic, of course. Cisco systems, VMware were also founded by husband-wife teams. So that can be very successful, but it brings its own set of challenges. This one was my idea. In the past, I've been kind of the business CEO that was using and partnering with somebody else who had a technical idea. In this case, with Khorus, the management system was really my idea, and then obviously my CEO experience. And so, it just fit that I would be the sole founder. I think a lot of times having two founders is great. If they complement your skill set, that's certainly a good thing. But having been through this journey many times, I felt comfortable that I could do it alone.
Talk to us about how do you find your clients? What is your acquisition strategy or your marketing strategy?
Yeah, it's interesting because we're about the only company I know of that is trying to sell software directly to the CEO to be used by the CEO.
That's hard, right? Those guys are busy.
Yeah, they're busy. No one's written the book on how you do that. So it is a lot of direct conversations. I reach out direct. I send out my book to people. I do some speaking. But you have to find them one at a time because especially if they have hundreds or thousands of employees, they're not out looking for software to run their business specifically,
right.
Certainly not for something for themselves to use. I believe, though, one of the things I tell everybody is, 10 years from now, it will be common, it will be expected that CEOs will have a software platform for running their business. And everybody thinks about that and goes, yeah, software is eating the world. We know that. And so it's just a matter of when do we get that to that tipping point where executives and boards begin to ask for it. Hey, where's your system? How do you run this organization? What happens if you get hit by a bus? All these questions that aren't well answered in most organizations today.
It is amazing. Like you said, software is eating the world. And, that clip, I think Mark Andreessen maybe said that. I can't remember exactly, but it's true. There's dashboards for everything, dashboards for your financials, dashboards for your marketing metrics. Everything gets tied in. You get nice, fancy graphs and charts out of it. But certainly for the CEO, he cares about those too, but he also cares about stuff on a higher level, his employees, his managers. What are some of the most important features of Khorus?
Yeah, I think the most important thing we try to do for CEOs is get them focused on the future. If you use the Jim Collins analogy of being the bus driver driving the bus, the CEO's role is to look down the road as far as possible, anticipate any curves in the road, avoid potholes, make the right turns. But if you think about what the CEO is getting from the typical organization, they're getting data, right? All these dashboards you talked about. But data, by definition, is a historical event. It's something that's already happened in your business. And so that would be like driving the bus while looking in the rearview mirror and then wondering why you keep running into things. So what we try to do with Khorus is we give everybody in the organization the ability to make predictions. So to give you data about the future instead of just historical data about the past. So we're the only software in the world that asks every knowledge worker in your organization to make a prediction about achieving their goals and objectives. And so this is just a fundamentally different way to look at running an organization. And some of the great CEOs have done this kind of naturally. We're the first ones to really systematize it in a way that can be used by everyone.
Gotcha. Okay. Now you guys have raised 6.6 million. How much did you raise in the seed, and then how much in additional rounds after that? Looks like maybe you guys are on your A or your B right now.
Yeah, so we're in a little bit of a unique situation, and I was able to fund a lot of the development myself. So I'm the largest investor in Khorus, as well as being the CEO and founder. And so we've done it in chunks as we need it. We just recently closed a $1.2 million external round, and then I added some money as part of that. And we think that's going to take us to profitability here, within the year.
Awesome. Now, you guys are in Austin. As I mentioned in the pre-call, I haven't really done too many interviews with Austin-based companies, which is surprising because I know there's a lot of cool stuff going on down there. Maybe just talk to us for a couple minutes about the Austin startup ecosystem and how much you've seen it growing over the last few years.
Yeah, certainly. I moved here in 1992, and it was still a small, sleepy college town. with the University of Texas here, and very little technology presence. A few semiconductor manufacturers were the only real technology presence. And over the years, that's changed dramatically. During the first internet bubble, we certainly built some companies here, brought in a lot of very smart people. Austin has become a destination city for millennials, so a lot of the best and brightest want to move to Austin. So that has engendered a young but very thriving startup community in Austin.
And the company, you started Khorus in Austin, right? So you guys have been there the whole time?
We have, yes.
And is it University of Texas is in Austin, correct?
That's correct.
And what are some of the big companies, like the big Fortune 500 names that we might recognize?
Yeah, interestingly, of the technology companies, almost all have a presence now in Austin, which didn't used to be true. It's almost become a second Silicon Valley as far as locations. I mean, Apple has a big presence here. Facebook has a big presence here. The homegrown companies, the companies like Dell, of course, was homegrown out of Austin. Whole Foods was homegrown out of Austin. Silicon Labs, National Instruments. These are some of the homegrown companies. But what's interesting is almost all the big tech companies now have a presence in Austin as well.
Now, with regards to recruiting, you're about 15 people now. I'm assuming that you're still growing, probably
Sure.
still looking to hire some new people. What is your recruiting strategy? And are you recruiting, kids coming out of college? You're recruiting from other startups? You're recruiting for some of those big, tech companies that you just mentioned?
Yeah, we have a little bit of an interesting situation in that what we're doing is building a product for CEOs, which, while there are certainly some young CEOs that there's a certain demographic that goes with that job description. So for a lot of our positions, we're looking for people who are a little more experienced, a little more senior, whether, maybe they haven't been a CEO in a situation where they interacted with CEOs, so they understand the customer, they understand the way they think, and can provide value to our customers.
That's a good point. Yeah, 23-year-old selling to CEOs is probably a bad idea.
Yeah, that's not going to work very well, no matter what they say or how smart they are.
This is Jonah Lupton, founder of Joel and host of the Startup Sense podcast. At Joel, we help entrepreneurs and startup founders build, launch, and grow their companies by providing superior technology, marketing, and consulting services. We help clients of all sizes, budgets, and industries. We put our clients in the best position to raise capital, grow revenues, hire employees, and maximize their profits. For more information or to set up a free consultation with our team, please visit our website at jool.net. That's JOOL.net. How is your team broken up in terms of technical people and non-technical people?
Yeah, it's, we have a, 5-6 person development team. Sales is actually relatively small for us because just a couple of us can have, since it's a kind of a one-stop sales process, right? You talk to the CEO, and if they say no, you're done. If they say yes, then often they will want you to have one more call with their executive team. And kind of give them the same pitch that you've given to the CEO, but that's usually the end of the sales process, right? And now sometimes they push you off and don't make a decision, but there's not much more to do. In some of my previous businesses, you had to talk to 8 different people, any one of which could say no. No one could actually say yes, though, and so you had to line up herd the cats to get a deal done. It's very different in this role in that, if you get the CEO saying yes and his executive team not pushing back too hard, you can get a deal done quickly. It's just hard getting that initial conversation.
Right. So after you had that first conversation, the sales cycle is not too long.
That's right. So we spend a lot of our effort, the marketing, the content creation, creating great content for CEOs to better understand the role. And so I encourage people to take a look at our content because I think we have world-class content in the area of CEO, the role of the CEO.
So that actually brings up a good point. So that sounds like that's probably a big part of your marketing message or your, CEO acquisition strategy is content.
Absolutely.
So are you the only one at the company that creates content, or do you have a team?
No, I have a couple of folks that take what I write and make me sound smart. I actually have to go down there occasionally and tell them, watch out, when I show up on site, people are going to think I'm smarter than I am. So don't make it sound too good. But I have a couple of folks that are great at that.
You guys do any sponsorships of CEO groups? I'm just thinking like in Boston, where I spent most of my career, there's the Boston College CEO Club, which is like all the, top Fortune 1000 CEOs in the Boston area. I mean, have you guys gotten involved in groups like that?
We do some work with some of those groups. I've certainly done some speaking for organizations like Vistage, that CEO peer groups, and organizations like that. But it's really hard to find gatherings of a large number of CEOs of any substantially sized companies, right? They tend to be kind of hanging out alone. There are some industry consortiums. Occasionally you can find groups together. So various industries have some events that we try to participate in. But it's tough.
I think that might actually be the largest, or one of the top few largest CEO groups in the country. And I mean, I've been invited as a guest a few times. This is going 4 or 5 years back, but at my table was like the CEO of EMC and Bob Kraft and
yes,
heavy hitters.
Right.
What's been the biggest challenge, you think, over the last 4 or 5 years since you started the company, or something unexpected that came up that you guys had to deal with?
Well, we're creating a new category, and anytime you create a new category, it's hard. And I've spent my whole career building things that most people said, "Why would you build that?" or "Why would I buy one of those?" Right? And so I've seen this movie before, but it's always more difficult than you think to get people to buy something that's brand new that they've never bought before. They'll get interested, they think that's cool, but they always want somebody else to be the test case, right? And so that's always the challenge in this area, is getting other people to finding the early adopters who will jump in and be the test case and champion it till the rest of the industry kind of wakes up one day and goes, "Oh yeah, we should have one of those."
So one of the questions I like to ask some once in a while, especially with B2B software companies, is, were there any features that you guys put into the first or second version of Khorus that ended up kind of, I guess, not panning out the way that you would have expected in terms of client adoption?
Yeah, so for us, that's a big challenge. We spend a lot of time trying not to put too many things in the product, because the natural inclination of software people, and I have an engineering background, is to, if we just add this feature, and so we've tried to do less of that. We don't lose deals because we don't have a feature. We lose deals because companies aren't ready to adopt something like this, right? So when you don't have a bunch of competitors in a market, adding features isn't going to make a big difference for you. Now, there may be some feature we haven't thought of that customers would just, it would fly off the shelves if we had it, but we try to be pretty good about that. But that's very important at this stage, not putting too much into it.
What do you think is the most common reason for a no from a CEO? Is it just, "I'm too busy to deal with this right now, I don't want to spend the money, I'm too cheap"? What do you think?
We colloquially refer to it as the bar problem, which is at 9 p.m. in the bar, everybody wants to lose weight. It's 6 a.m. the next morning, and I call you to go running. There's a high dropout rate. Right. And so, we have the same problem. When we go engage with a company, engage with the CEO, the first thing we're going to ask them are, "What are your key goals and objectives?" And we need to write those down. And then we need to do that for the rest of your team. And that's hard work. Now, we think it's incredibly valuable work, and we think our customers, would tell you they wouldn't do it any other way now that they've done it. But when you start from a blank sheet of paper, sometimes that's really tough and puts a discipline on the organization that not all organizations are ready for.
Who's been your best hire, you think? And I know that's a hard question to be put on the spot with. So if you don't want to answer, I understand. But
yeah, no, it's a good question. Certainly, the content creation people we have, is a hard skill to find at this level, right? Because again, we're dealing with the CEO, and so it's not just writing some puff piece. This has to be interesting. It has to have a viewpoint. It has to be concise. And so that's probably the hardest thing we have, that would be the hardest thing to replace if they left tomorrow.
Now, is that content? I mean, I would agree that is premium content. I mean, I've unsubscribed to most of the business newsletters and blogs that I used to get information from, because it's all so generic. Sounds like you guys are really trying to create premium content. Is that available for free? I mean, would I be able to access that content, or is it really just for customers?
No, absolutely. You can access most of that content for free. And yeah, I think that's something that everybody ought to take a look at if they have any interest in the CEO position, whether they're a big company or small company. There's a lot of great content there, and we have a certain viewpoint and methodology. When I wrote my book, the thing that surprised me most was that there weren't really a lot of established methods for how you do the CEO job. And so that's really what I felt like I created with the book was a methodology. Is it the best methodology? Well, I tell everybody it is because it's the only one I know of. I'd be happy for people to say, here's how to improve it, certainly. I'm sure it's not perfect, but at least it is a sort of methodology and way to think about the job. And I think that's very valuable for people because just like we've seen sales process methodology really drive the sales industry over the past 20 years, I think that we're due for CEO methodology to drive the way CEOs do and think about their job.
So this came up the other day in a conversation I had with a friend over coffee, and he wants to start a company. He thinks he has the idea, sorted out in his head, but he didn't go to business school, and he's wondering if he should go spend the next 2 years going to business school before he starts his first company. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, I would have a strong opinion that they should not spend their time going to business school if they want to be an entrepreneur and want to, or even want to run an organization from the start. Business school, there's a certain set of skills that they teach, but they tend to teach those skills because they are easy to teach.
Right.
And so things like, analysis is mathematical analysis is pretty easy to teach. And so they tend to be very heavily focused on that. Things like how do you manage 50 people and get the best out of them from a performance perspective is not easy to teach. So they tend to not do a very good job or not even, spend time thinking about it. So I find a lot of the, classic MBAs are very focused on the numbers and know little about the people side of the business, which after 30 years of doing this, I would tell you, everything's about the people.
I agree 100%. So I'm glad I asked the question. Totally agree. I mean, I think everything I've learned as an entrepreneur, it happens on the job. It happens from getting knocked down and having to get up and, figure out solutions and deal with fires and all this other stuff. So and you can't learn that stuff sitting in the classroom reading through case studies.
And the other thing I pointed out about the CEO position, which I think is unique among the positions in a typical business, is the CEO job is more personal than any other job. You can be the VP of sales at work and then go home and kind of be a different person and drop it and not deal with it. But so many of the decisions you make as the CEO end up being about your personal values, your behaviors. And so because of that, the job is just very personal. And it's really hard to separate the CEO, the person, from the CEO, the job.
Who is one CEO that you really admire?
Yeah, probably the best in my business career for what he did, in my opinion, was Alan Mulally, who rescued Ford that was in terribly dire straits. He managed to turn it around without taking government money, while his prime competitors, GM and Chrysler, took government money. And it's a great story. If you haven't read the book, The American Icon, which is written by a guy from the Detroit Free Press, I believe, is their newspaper that followed the auto industry for years and wrote about the turnaround. That's a great story, and I think he did an unbelievable job.
He was at Boeing before at Ford, right?
That's right. He wasn't CEO at Boeing, but he was running a large part of the operation at Boeing, and then came to Ford to be CEO.
He really did transform that company. I mean, I remember I thought Ford was dead. Cars just seemed to be so outdated, no new models, and Ford really has become a very innovative company with some really nice looking cars now, cars and SUVs.
Absolutely, yeah. You could have bought their stock for $1 or $1.50 a share at one point. So
I did that the other day. I went on to CNBC's website and typed in a few of these stocks that have been flying the last 5 years. Even where you could have bought them back in like 2007. During that credit crisis. Oh God, they were trading single digits. And now they're just incredible. But it's just hard to pull the trigger when things look that bad. What else? What else did we skip over? Something else that you wanted a chance to mention, either about the company or about your journey building Khorus, or what's up next? What does the future look like for the company?
Yeah, I think we're excited that some of our customers, now we've been in business long enough because to see the real value from what we're doing. This is not something that you put in and day one you get benefit because, like I said, first day you got to figure out what your priorities are, and then you have to track them over the quarter, and then you have to do it again the next quarter. And so, this is a change in the way people run their business. So it's a 2, 3, 4 quarter process that most companies go through. And we're now at the point where we're starting to see a lot of our customers that have been through that journey and starting to see the real advantage and power of what we're offering them. And now they, wouldn't run a business any other way. So that's very satisfying when you have CEOs that are telling you that this has really changed the way they run their business.
So, according to the pricing on the website, looks like you guys charge $15 per user per month. Any idea what the typical number of users is for a company that you guys work with?
Yeah, like I say, it really runs the gamut. We have customers that have 25 employees on the software, and we have customers who have 1,000 employees on the software. And so, we haven't got a call from GE or somebody yet to deploy it to 100,000. And we probably tell them, let's start with a little bit smaller group day one, but we know it scales up into the thousands.
So you started the company in 2012. It's 2017 now. If you could go back 5 years, what's one thing that you would tell yourself about building this company? Maybe something that you could do differently.
It's going to take longer and it's going to be harder than you think it is.
So true, so true. That seems to be a common theme amongst entrepreneurs for sure. What part you think takes the longest or is the hardest?
Customer adoption, when you're doing something that is novel, it's amazing how long it takes customers to just get comfortable with the idea. I mean, we got a call the other day from a demo I did probably 3 years ago, one of the first demos I ever did when we had working software, and the customer calls back after 3 years and goes, "Oh, I think I'm ready to do this," and you're like, "What the heck? It took you so long?" So that kind of thing is what you see. It just takes them a long time before people feel comfortable and are willing to make a change in their management system.
Absolutely. And last question, single best piece of advice for an entrepreneur looking to build a B2B software company.
Learn how the customer buys. Make sure you understand how the customer buys. Because B2B is very different than consumer. We all have been consumers and know how we buy certain things, but I've seen more mistakes made because B2B software people thought the business was going to buy in the same manner and use the same factors that a consumer might use, and they don't. They behave very differently than consumers.
Right. That's a very, very good point. Well, that's a good place to end. I know you're a busy guy. You got a big company to run, so let's stop it there. Joel, I want to thank you for being a guest today. What's other than the Khorus website, what's the best way that we can connect with you and learn more about the company?
Yeah, so you can go to Khorus.com. You can also go, if you're interested in my writings, theamericanceo.com, where I publish a lot of interviews with CEOs like you do and other information that's relevant to CEOs. So theamericanceo.com.
Awesome. I'm actually just pulled up the website. Looks good. Yeah, it looks like a ton of good information on here. Okay, I'll put this in the show notes as well, and hopefully we can get some people signed up for that. And looks like you have a book. What is the name of your book?
The CEO Tightrope.
Okay, and where's that available?
That's available at Amazon, and you can get it on Kindle in hard copy or on Audible.
Awesome. Well, Joel, thank you so much, man. I want to wish you the best of luck moving forward, and look forward to staying in touch with you.
Thank you, Jonah.
You got it, man. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.